Welcome to the new sound of online radio. Welcome to the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network. 'Cause you make me feel like I've been locked out of heaven. A mix of today's hits and hard-to-find favorites, combined with the most entertaining and intriguing talk anywhere. This is your sound. This is the sound of Universal Broadcasting Network at UPNradio.com.
Hello, Rebel Hearts. Welcome to Season 2 of Rebel Hearts with Kristie Reeves. I was actually out there in the parking lot dancing around because that's how excited I was to be back on the show after a 6 to 7 week hiatus. So we're officially doing our first show of 2018. We're starting Season 2. And as you know, Rebel Hearts is all about inspiring you to become the change that you want to see in the world. And we're starting off our season with another Health Wisdom Wednesdays. We usually do these Health Wisdom Wednesdays once a month, where we bring in pioneers and change makers who work in the medical or integrative and the holistic field in order to bring forth knowledge about the body, mind, spirit, and how our bodies work and what we can do to stay vital and healthy. And, you know, when I first had the idea for Health Wisdom Wednesday, it was actually thanks to Halsey Wilson from Golden Ratio Product. And Halsey said to me, he's like, you know what? If you want to empower people or want to inspire people to become the change they want to see in the world, these people have to be healthy. They need to be empowered. They need to know how the body works and what they can do to become healthy or stay healthy. So this is how that idea of Health Wisdom Wednesday was born last year in the summer. So I'm really excited about today's guest. I've known him for several years now, and I'm so honored that he said yes to coming on the show. He has such incredible wisdom and knowledge. So let me tell you a little bit about him. Dr. Edward J. Wilson, MD, is an active physician in the acute care setting in Los Angeles. He trained in internal medicine at USC, UCLA, and McGill University. As a Kennamer follower, he taught medicine at UCLA's Wadsworth Medical Center, and for years he headed the Department of Integrative Medicine at BeurinUniversity. For 20 years, he walked in the shadow of Moroccan mystics, learning the art of meditation and self-discovery. Holding a Bachelor of Arts in Humanistic Studies, he has co-authored a book called Yoga of Abraham, Practice of Peace, which offers an introduction to an ancient Kabbalah-based system of feeling with insights from our modern understanding of human physiology. Let me welcome Dr. Edward Wilson. Hi, Ed. It's so good to have you here.
Well, thank you very much, Kristie. It's great to be here and to spend some time with you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. I was driving over here, Ed, and I was thinking, I've known you for nearly 7 years now. I met you through BeurinUniversity.
Right.
And as long as I've been working with the university, I've heard about Doc Wilson, and he's phenomenal, and he's really amazing, and his knowledge, he's an allopathic physician, but his knowledge outside of Western medicine is so incredible. So I've been hearing about it for years and years and years. And then it was not until about, I think it was a year ago when you spoke at the...
yes.
Yeah. When you spoke at the summit, I'm like, wow, he really is amazing. This is amazing knowledge. So I'm so excited that you're here and that we'll be chatting about.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Yay. Awesome. So what I actually want to start with, because, you know, when we empower people to become the change they want to see in the world, we all, I feel, have our own hero's journey, our own path that got us to where we are right now. Now, you started with medicine after you went into the mysticism?
Yes. They sort of came in simultaneously in my life.
Okay.
That was just a mystical occurrence. As I came to LA to deepen my knowledge in internal medicine, I also became very close to my teacher, with whom I co-wrote the book Yoga of Abraham. And so that both journeys happened sort of simultaneously.
Nice. And what was your inspiration between studying medicine in the first place and becoming a physician of internal medicine?
Well, I come from a family of physicians, and I have that part of my family is actually Moroccan in origin, which is interesting because my teacher was also a Moroccan mystic, deeply steeped in Kabbalistic teachings. So part of it was just, I was sort of groomed into it.
Yeah.
And part of it was just the more I delved into it, the more fascinating I found the human body to be. And the more enthused I was about just meeting more and more people, whether it be medical professionals or people who need help.
Yeah.
So I find I've had a lot of teachers, including in my patient population. So it's not an easy journey, but definitely a very rewarding one.
And you work a lot in the ER, don't you?
So I work in the hospital.
In the hospital?
When someone comes to the emergency room, they usually see the emergency room physician who does sort of a triage. And then if the person is not well enough to go home, they're going to call someone with my expertise.
Nice,
And then so we go down to the emergency room and we sort of take it from there.
Yeah. Nice. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So what I want to do is, when I saw your lecture last year at BeurinUniversity, there was, I studied psychosomatic medicine for about 20 years. And it's so fascinating, the body, mind, spirit connection, how every organ is symbolic for a different emotion or a different belief system. And I was so fascinated by what you had to share because there were so many new insights that I still have my notes actually right here. So I actually would love to have you share some of the things you talked about. And I have my notes over here.
Sure.
But first of all, how did you get interested in that organ connection, the organ and the emotion, the organ and the belief system? What created that interest or that inspiration?
I think a lot of it came from my teacher, who is an expert in Kabbalistic teachings. And he turned my attention towards a very ancient book called the Book of Creation, which they say is attributed to none other than the biblical patriarch, Abraham. And this is a book which you could say is sort of the founding stone of the Kabbalistic tradition, and which has been studied by mystics in the Jewish tradition, but also in the Muslim tradition and in the Christian tradition. So it's really sort of it's a book which has huge universal significance and, in a sense, predates religion. And just to get to your question, it's really in that book that way back when, so 4,000 years ago, there's this connection between organs of the body, which are connected to what we call virtues. So to give just an example for the audience to kind of get a feel for it. On the second day of the week in the Yoga of Abraham, we practice a certain posture, and this posture is related to an organ system. So let's say we're talking about Monday, the Monday posture. The Monday posture is connected to the immune system. We can go into later why it's the second day and sort of.
And we're going to talk later about who Abraham is and what the Yoga of Abraham includes, amongst other things.
So there's the immune system is attached to a certain virtue, which is done by this ancient tradition, and in this case, it's the virtue of courage. And if you give it a little bit of thought, you can really make more and more connections between the idea of courage and the idea of the immune system. So what I teach is really the idea that if I want to learn about courage in a way that that is constructive towards making my life a healthier life, where my energy is sort of more centered and where I'm more one with myself and with who I'm supposed to be, who I want to be, then I'm going to look inside. I'm going to look inside because my human physiologic body is a living testament of how all these different organ systems can actually cohabit together and make my body work as one. So why not use the human physiology of the body to teach us about how it gets done? And each organ of the body has, you could say, a certain personality. And in the example we're giving, which is the immune system, there's a connection with courage. So the more you know, the more you just open the book of physiology, and we're very blessed today because we live in the 21st century where we actually have a very in-depth and precise knowledge of these things. How my body handles confrontation, how my body handles infections is actually going to teach me about the idea of courage. So just in this particular example, we're going to touch on issues of restraint, because courage doesn't always have to do with a full-on attack. It can have to do with restraint. Just like the immune system, when it's confronted with an infection, it has to defend the body, which is a sign of courage, but it's going to do it in a way that's not over the top, because if it goes too much in that direction, then obviously that can actually affect in a negative way how the body works. So that's just one example of how our body is a village, which is the home to different organs. Each one of these organs stands for a certain attribute, a certain virtue, and when you put them all together, we have this amazing, system where they all know what to do, and they work as a team and towards the oneness of staying alive and having a thriving, healthy life.
Yeah, that's amazing. And first of all, I find it so fascinating that this has been around for 4,000 years, and how we have actually forgotten some of these ancient teachings that are so profound and so powerful. I mean, to know that the immune system stands for courage, and this is a 4,000-year-old teaching, and the Yoga of Abraham is a 4,000-year-old practice.
Absolutely.
And to forget about it and to rebirth it in a way, it's just so incredible. So thank you for bringing it over here and sharing it with us.
It's my pleasure.
So I would love to ask you something more about the immune system, but what came up to me is like, so let's say, we have a constantly weakened immune system, or nowadays we constantly hear about one autoimmune disease after the next popping up. So with the immune system being connected to courage and looking at autoimmune disorders or diseases, however we want to call them, how can we use that knowledge? How can we apply that knowledge to create a shift, maybe an internal shift that would strengthen our immune system, that would maybe even allow our body to help heal an autoimmune disease?
Yeah, so that's a big question. If I had the perfect answer, I think I'd be up for a Nobel Prize.
Who knows?
The idea of the practice which we put forth in this book, Yoga of Abraham, Practice of Peace, as I said, each day of the week has a certain organ system it focuses on. So the first day of the week has to do with the blood and the liver system. Second day of the week has to do with the immune system. And as we go down through all 7 days of the week, we're going to go through all the major 7 systems as sort of detailed in the Yoga of Abraham. And the idea is that we learn to put intention, a healing intention, connected to breathing, and breathing. Obviously, if it's done in the context of a practice, of a yoga practice, of a spiritual practice, you're affirming the intention of becoming more aware of this yoga posture, of the immune system, for instance, if we're on day 2 of the week. And the whole idea, I think, is, one way of looking at sickness is one of the organ systems forgets that it's part of a village, and it starts to go rogue in a sense. And then it can fall into imbalance. The village works well when each part of it, whether it be the heart, the lungs, the liver, the heart, the immune system, when they all kind of do their thing, but they do it with a global awareness of what else is going on in the village. And this daily practice, because the Yoga of Abraham is a daily practice where every day we focus on a specific organ system, allows for kind of bringing back the memory of the healthy village.
Like the divine blueprint of the organ and
exactly.
the healthy village. Amazing.
So you're kind of, on Monday, you're going to be reminded of the immune system. So just by showing up, by doing that yoga posture, you're infusing your intention and your immune system with attention, with a healing attention, which is very much connected to breath-centered exercise. But because the next day you're going to move on to another system and another system, and then when the week comes around, you're going to come back to the immune system. What you're doing is you're creating you're reviving the memory of your original self, in a sense, your original blueprint. And that takes us all the way back to the stem cell, in a sense, which is kind of the the mothership, which stores all the memory of the oneness.
Which I found so fascinating. Would you share a little bit about the stem cells with us? Because I think that's how your lectures start. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Share some of that. What does the stem cell stand for? What does it symbolize?
Well, the stem cell is really one of the amazing, fascinating discoveries that's unfolding as we speak. And the stem cell is basically the original cell that we start from. So in a sense, it's when the genetic information from the father and genetic information from the mother come together and form the original cell. And in that cell, you have sort of the blueprint. Once again, you have the whole genetic code of how to make a human being. From blue eyes to blonde hair to kidneys to so the whole book is in the stem cell. What makes the stem cell unique is it's sort of the book before you open it. All the information is there, but it's in a state of pure stillness. So it's kind of the beginning. And what we like to teach in the Yoga of Abraham teaching is the stem cell is kind of connected to the breath. That if someone takes a little time to practice breathing and to become a little bit of an expert in meditation, which just means showing up every day and becoming familiar with your own breath, the breath really gives us a stem cell experience because it's formless. If you go deep enough, it's timeless. Yet it goes really to the most deep inner core of our being. So we like to call the breathing part of our practice something that connects with the stem cell consciousness.
That is amazing.
And what's, just to take it a step further, since every day of the week has a certain posture which is connected to a certain organ system, what we're doing is we're doing the same breath, obviously, in all yoga postures every day of our lives because it's our breath. So that stem cell is kind of the beginning of all yoga postures. And as we go through the different organ systems of the body, as the week unfolds, we're going from stem cell, which is the breath, all the way to a formed organ.
Amazing.
Just to give the audience a little bit of a background of how the body is created in 1 minute or less. The stem cell has all the information. It has all the information to make an eyeball all the way down to giving someone blue eyes. But as the stem cell multiplies and divides, I should say, parts of the book are going to be turned on. So different genetic sequences are going to start lighting up, and other sequences are going to stay dormant. And that basically takes the cell down its path. So it starts off as a stem cell, which has the power to be any cell, just like a baby has the power to become a plumber or a doctor or a guitar player. But as he grows up and he works his way through language and through life, he's going to specialize in a certain field. So the body does the same thing. So with the Yoga of Abraham, we really like to tune people's awareness towards, in a sense, the process of their own creation. The whole idea of recreating yourself, of getting in touch with the ingredients which allow us to kind of roll it back, like my teacher used to say. The idea is to roll it back all the way to the beginning, and then you sort of have the blueprint, but you also have the freshness to recreate yourself physically and bring more health and strength and flexibility, but also mentally to revisit who you are in a deeper way.
Now I'm getting really curious about the different days of the week. You already mentioned day 1 and 2. So what is day 3, 4, 5, and so on?
Right. So the way we teach it at BeurinUniversity, where I've been really blessed to be in touch with a lot of healers and people dedicated to making the world a slightly better place. What we teach is a story of creation. Once again, one of the big parts about healing oneself, I think, is to be aware of who we are. And the more awareness we have, then the more space we have to, to make changes, the idea of knowing oneself, of self-knowledge, is also kind of knowing yourself physiologically. As I said, if you know the village physiologically, then there's sort of a parallel dimension where there's yourself spiritually. And the Yoga of Abraham really taps into that. So I teach the story of creation. So day one is the blood system, because the blood is sort of the carrier of everything, and it's connected to the idea of love, because blood is what really allows the body to be one, because it connects the top of your head to the bottom of your feet.
Flows all over the place.
Exactly. So it's the great connector. Then day two is the immune system, because once you have the intention of creating a body, and you've gone past day one, then obviously you need some sort of a defense mechanism in order to be able to to survive as a body in this world, which can be friendly but which can also be hostile.
And you needed the courage to go out into the world, right?
Exactly. And you want courage to be just well proportioned, so that you're not too crazy and you're not too docile. Exactly. So day three is once you have day one and two, blood and immune system, and blood includes liver, just for those who are wondering. Day three is the heart and lungs. So it's sort of the beginning of motion. Now that we have a bloodstream and we have a sort of an army with the immune system, things go into motion. And that's really the beginning of life, the heart and the lungs. And the lungs bring in oxygen, the heart distributes it by pumping the blood around. That's day three. Day four is the kidneys. Day five is the digestive system. And although they're on separate days, they share very similar roles. They're both about maintenance. Just like when you have a car and the car starts to move from A to B, then you have to change the oil, you have to put gas in. So once the heart on day three starts to get things moving, then you need maintenance, which is the kidneys and the digestive system. The heart and lungs, just for our audience, is connected to the idea of truth and harmony and balance. The immune system, courage. The blood and liver, love. Day four, which is the kidneys, is connected to the idea of what the mystics call triumph, the idea of victory, which is connected to the idea of time. Because the kidneys are basically... it's like when you make a soup and you just put your finger in the soup to see if it's just right. Maybe you need a little pepper, maybe you need a little salt. And so the kidneys are connected to that idea of monitoring every moment with the idea of guaranteeing a healthy future. The digestive tract is connected to the idea of gratitude, because what we put in our systems has a lot to do with gratitude in a sense, and what comes out of our mouth. So the whole idea of just being content with what we have. The whole idea of let me not eat too much. Let me just eat what I need, and have a sense of gratitude with whatever comes my way. So that's all the way to day five, which is really we've already nearly made a human body by day five. And day six is connected to the idea of a foundation, which is connected to the muscles and kind of the muscular sheath that puts us together. And then day seven in the Abrahamic tradition, which is connected to the biblical tradition, although it's a completely universal non-religious practice.
I was going to ask that,
Yeah, I don't want to spook my audience. Just like the yoga that came from India is really a universal practice, because we all share the same temple in a sense. The Yoga of Abraham, although obviously it has, it's at the roots of a lot of religious developments, is a purely universal practice. So day seven is the day of rest, and it's connected to the idea of royalty. Because the king and the queen, because they are who they are in the kingdom, you don't want the king to go sweep the floor of the palace.
Yeah.
You want the king to be very relaxed. And so he can actually think and take care of the kingdom in a way that's infused with rest and well-being.
Yeah.
So day 7 is connected to the bones.
Interesting.
Because the bones are very still. It's a very
Yeah.
still part of our body, and they grow very, very slowly, but they're very foundational, obviously.
Yeah.
And just to connect day 7 to day 1, the blood cells which is connected to day 1, are created in the bone marrow. So in a sense, the day of rest, day 7, which has to do with the bones, in a sense, is a launching to start this 7-day cycle again.
Nice.
And so it's just a lot of awareness. And obviously you can have many layers of knowledge to all of this. Me as a physician, I have my own expertise.
Yeah.
But really, for anybody, it's just, who am I? I'm connected to all of this, all this village, which thrives physically, but it also thrives there's a spiritual dimension to it.
Yeah, I think it's so beautiful how they described it as a village. When I studied psychosomatic, it was always like it's an orchestra that plays together in harmony.
Exactly.
It's like, it's like, and to bring back that harmony, because if one part is out of harmony, or out of balance, if one person in the village goes rogue, it affects the whole village, right?
Exactly. So that's really the idea, just to answer your question about the immune system. When you have all these autoimmune problems, you can go into extremely complicated medicine where, even the doctors and the researchers are still scratching their heads on a lot of this. But then on just a purely just practice side of it, that whole idea of just every day, you're just showing up, you're giving that 20-minute practice of stretching, of doing the right yoga postures to bring back that awareness of, let's bring the immune system back into the village.
Yeah.
It's gone a little bit. It's gone a little bit off balance. So
It's gone to war.
So you do that by exactly. You do that by the gentle practice of increasing your awareness.
Amazing. Before we actually talk about what the Yoga of Abraham is in a little bit more detail, and who Abraham actually is, and some of the prophecies, there was one thing that you talked about, which is the right and the left side of the body and the difference in energetics. Would you share some of that with us?
Yes, absolutely. If anybody out there is familiar with the Kabbalistic tree, where you have what would appear to be a sort of a chakra system, although it's a completely different system, and really it's a different map, completely different map than the chakra system. And it's actually not a physical map, it's more of a spiritual map. One will know that there's a right column and then there's a left column, which travels through the whole Kabbalistic map. And this map includes the 7 days of the week. To answer your question is in a sense, once again, going back to the stem cell. The stem cell is the starting point when nothing is moving, when the blueprint is about to roll into action. And for this to happen properly, the body has sort of a code of behavior. And there's 2 principles which are very active. And those are the principles of the right column and of the left column. So for the details, obviously, someone should take a look at the book because it's sort of spelt out a little bit more in detail. But the idea is that we every organ system, every cell in our body, and even us as a human being in this world, on the right side, there's this idea of homeostasis, which is the idea that we're always trying to make things come closer to an idea of oneness. So we're always trying to unify our existence. We're always trying to bring things under the same umbrella, in a sense, just like we were saying, the whole idea of the village. The village sticks together and works well if each part of the village has a sense of homeostasis, which is an awareness of the whole. So although the kidney has a very specific function, which is to clean the blood and filter the blood and balance our fluids, it also, in order to do its job properly, it has to know what the heart is doing. It has to know what the immune system is doing. So in a sense, there's a specificity, but there's also an awareness of the one.
And a specific harmony and balance probably as well with the other organ systems.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So although just like the plumber has a very specific job in society, in order to be a healthy, functioning member of society, he also has a sense of everybody else in the village. So that's homeostasis. It's the awareness of the oneness. So very important for health. So the blood system has a lot to do with oneness. The kidney system is always trying to keep the pH of the body one and the sodium at the right level. And it has this sense of the whole environment in which the entire village exists. So those organs are more leaning towards homeostasis. And then the left column in this map of ideas really is the idea of distinction, the idea of intelligence in a sense. Just like the oneness is more wisdom connected, the two-ness, the idea of two, is more connected to the ability to distinguish. So like I teach in some of my classes, if you see an apple on the table and it's covered in this sort of velvety green foul-smelling patch, you're not going to take a bite of that apple. Probably not, because something in you is telling me that this is not good for me. It could be poisonous. It could be not healthy for my system. So this ability to distinguish what is good for me and what is not good for me is the other principle. So just to recap, we're always working to make oneness our priority because to bring things in a unified field. But to do that in a healthy way, you also have to have a very acute sense of what is me and what is not me. And that's very important. So if you're walking down the street and you see a bear running at you, you're not going to embrace that bear to have an increased feeling of homeostasis.
Hey, what's up, bear?
You're going to take a sharp left and keep running. So that's also important. That's a sense of intelligence, of being able to distinguish and acting on it. So those are the two principles that, every organ, every cell in our body is in a sense guided by this binary system in a sense.
Nice. What is so interesting, because the psychosomatics that I studied, let's say, for example, let's circle back to the liver, for example.
Right.
You said the liver is connected to love, and psychosomatics that I learned, it was like anger. But for me, what the Yoga of Abraham does is it teaches you the solution. If you have a lot of anger stuck in your liver, what is the antidote to anger? It's love. It
is love, exactly. It's the other side of the coin.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just absolutely amazing. Or if you think about it, the right and the left side of the body, the masculine and the feminine.
Right.
And the feminine is the intuitive aspect that knows that foul apple is probably not really the best thing to eat today.
Absolutely, exactly.
So it's very beautiful how it weaves together. And even seeing that lecture of yours last year and what you're sharing with us today, it's like it fills in the missing gap. So it actually, for me, it does provide the solution.
Absolutely. I think just awareness can unlock a lot of very tightly bolted doors. And what's nice about the practice of the Yoga of Abraham is that it is a physical practice. So you don't need to remember everything all the time when you're practicing it. All you have to do is show up. It's a very simple 20-minute practice a day. And just by showing up and just taking on the shape, let's say, which is connected to the immune system, then you're doing it. You're bringing that intention of healing. And I think the intention of healing has a lot to do with healing.
Absolutely.
A lot of people show up at the doctors just like they're at the McDonald's drive-through, and they just give me some good health. Give me some good health. But there's really they're not invested, and the level of intention, definitely could be dialed up a little bit more. And then I think healing becomes, more of an experience, more of a journey. Whatever comes out of that journey, obviously is a complicated thing. But I think if the awareness is part of it, then it's even the sickness can be an enriching experience, and lights at the end of the tunnels can appear.
And thank you for saying what you just said. And I mean, that was also one of the inspirations behind our Health Wisdom Wednesdays on here on Rebel Hearts.
Good.
Because it feels like we're so trained to just like take a pill. It's like I call it the Band-Aid method. We're just putting a Band-Aid on whatever is going on, and in a way also by just showing up and saying, "Give me a pill. I have these symptoms." We're actually giving our power away. We're not making the commitment to our own health, to taking care of ourselves.
Absolutely.
And it's so beautiful what you can say. With 20 minutes a day, you can actually make a commitment
Absolutely.
to your health. And I feel like, I sometimes say, in order to really heal, we need to make that commitment to ourselves that we are willing
Absolutely.
to heal.
No, I really want to make that clear to our listeners. I think, there's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of knowledge. There's a lot of advice, which comes from everywhere, especially with the internet today. But I think there's really no substitute for a daily practice. And one of the reasons I was drawn to the Yoga of Abraham and meditation is that I myself came from a broken home, and I came from I actually grew up in Europe and was sort of transplanted in my teenage years to North America. So there's a lot of things, a lot of moving parts inside of me, which really gave me the urge to reconnect with, like, who am I? How do I heal myself? Before all this tension and sort of dissonance turns into a physical disease, which we can do sometimes. And my first love, in a sense, was meditation, and then that sort of flowed into the Yoga of Abraham, which has a meditative and a physical dimension to it. But for all the people out there who are looking for ways of feeling better, there's, in a sense, there's too much advice out there, and a lot of people are running a little bit like chickens without a head, because there's dietary advice, there's this and that, and it's all good to some extent, but I think it's really the key, that the nugget, the gold nugget at the center of all that is find a daily practice. Because if you've lost touch with yourself, either physically or spiritually, or you just want to get closer and more, and express more of your own potential, it's like when you meet a person you don't know. The only way to get to know them is to show up every day and spend a little time, a little bit more time. And I think people need to do that with themselves.
I love that metaphor. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So daily practice, that is, it could be the Yoga of Abraham, which has a lot of vitamins and goodies in it. And I would be my pleasure if people took it on. Yeah. But any form of, just meditate, as long as it's just a stable, simple, short daily practice. The benefits cannot be put in a book. The benefits grow from within, and I just hope the listeners, tap into that side of things.
We're always sometimes we do a challenge in the show. So here we go, Rebel Hearts. I'm going to challenge you to let us know what your daily practice is. Or if you don't have one, create one and let us know. Write us, leave a message on our Facebook Live or our YouTube channel. Email me and we'll actually look at that.
Absolutely.
That's my challenge for you today. So we've been actually keeping you waiting with explaining who Abraham is. We've been hearing the Yoga of Abraham, and you mentioned it really quickly.
Right.
About the biblical Abraham. So share with us, how did you come across Abraham? Who is Abraham? What is this yoga about?
Right.
Besides everything you've told us already.
Sure. So Abraham is a figure, is a biblical figure. For those out there who have a little bit of biblical knowledge, they'll know who Abraham is. He's sort of the first, he's the starting point of a family, which sort of opens up into the whole, the biblical story. He's a prophet in a sense. And what is he known for? Whether or not Abraham existed or not, I don't know if anybody can say for sure. But he's just a huge symbolic presence in world spirituality, and what he stands for is the idea of oneness. So some people say, if you take it from a religious side, he's the father of monotheism. That there's sort of one divine presence that is the source of everything. And if you're not religiously inclined, that's fine by me also. He's really a symbol of oneness, of a sort of there's a universal oneness that I think connects all of us together. So that's who Abraham is. He, according to tradition, is the author of a book called the Book of Creation, which most people would agree he sort of received through meditation. And it's a book which outlines the various energetic shapes and forces that make up reality. So in a sense, just like the the Asian world has a sort of a yin and a yang system, which is sort of a pair of goggles you can put on, and through that pair of goggles, you have an amazing explanation of the universe. So Abraham comes from a different tradition. And in a sense, the pair of goggles you put on when you read the Book of Creation offers us a system into really understanding creation from a very mystical standpoint. One of the things which is amazing about the Book of Creation, and that's why it's really an important, very, very difficult to understand piece of work, but at the same time it's short. You can actually, get it at the bookstore. There is a translation. Is he talks about creation coming out of 22 different energetic letters, and these letters can either be male or female. And the book, it's just 6 short chapters, then launches into classifying these 22 energetic forms into sort of an alphabet of creation. And he talks about the organ systems, which are connected to different emotions. And really the Yoga of Abraham is completely based on it's an extension of this teaching. And what's really amazing about all that is that Abraham, as I said earlier, was connected to the idea of oneness. And lo and behold, the human stem cell, or actually every cell in our body, is made of 22 pairs of chromosomes. And which can either be in a male or in a female. So we have this really unbelievable connection with a piece of mystical work which was written by none other than the prophet Abraham, the patriarch Abraham, who is connected to the idea of oneness. And 4,000 years ago, before the microscope existed, before even an understanding of how the body really worked, he is communicating a prophecy by which the body is indeed stems from 22 energetic forms, now known as chromosomes, which can either be male or female, which is XX or XY. So it's really it's kind of an honor for me to have met my teacher and to be part of this book, because we feel we're, in a sense, we're connecting 4,000 years ago to what's going on right now, which is, in a sense, we're nearly being handed the keys to creation. I mean, there's a few Nobel Prizes that still need to be won, but the potential for goodness and for positive transformation is enormous. Of course, we need to have the maturity as a human community to handle this information.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's why I think awareness and meditation and things like yoga and the Yoga of Abraham, as humans, we need to graduate ourselves to a level of being responsible for this kind of information. So hopefully, as people develop a daily practice and go deeper inside and get in touch with their 22, energetic letters, then we'll all get there together.
I'm just going to quote something that I found so fascinating. Thank you for sharing all this. All the secrets for leading a good life are inscribed in our DNA since the beginning of time. When I read this sentence in your book, I went like, whoa, this is incredible.
Right.
And you talk about the 23 DNA or the 22 DNA strands and the additional one, and how our history, physiology, and psychology are all written in this biochemical language as dictated by the rules of space, time, and being. I just found this so fascinating.
Right. So it is fascinating. And one of the huge benefits of practicing the Yoga of Abraham is that you're getting in touch with all these ingredients of creation. So just like we have 22 pairs of chromosomes, there are only 22 postures, essentially, in the Yoga of Abraham. And different postures are done at different times. So some are daily postures, which are done on, each one has its day of the week. And other postures are monthly postures. So for the whole lunar cycle, each lunar cycle has its posture. So for the 28 days of a specific lunar cycle, you're going to be doing a specific posture. So there's different cycles of time that become activated in the person who practices the Yoga of Abraham. And that's why we call it a yoga of time, because you're actually revisiting the same posture on a specific day of the week. Like every Monday, you're going to revisit a certain posture, in this case, the immune system posture. Every month of Gemini or every month of Taurus, every lunar cycle, you're going to be focusing on one particular lunar posture. And the whole idea is that you're marinating these ingredients, which are different time cycles, different physical configurations, which are the different yoga postures, and you're working on breathing. So it's called a triple yoga, is what we call, which is a yoga of time, space, and being, which is actually unique. It's really the only practice, to my knowledge, as far as yoga goes, that has these ingredients. And the whole idea, once again, is as we dabble in these ingredients, which are very much part of how we started off and how we're evolving and growing and staying alive physiologically, which is time, space, and being. We're bringing back the memory, in a sense, of the stem cell. We're getting in touch with who we are, what we're made of. We're getting in touch with the moon, with the daily cycles, and all that put together, brings back the memory of the original self, you could say.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I just got our 2-minute signal over here. So there is so much more that I wanted to talk to you about, but time just flies by. So if any one of our listeners wants to learn more about the Yoga of Abraham, besides getting your incredible book, everybody out there, all your listeners, go to Amazon and order Dr. Edward Wilson's book, The Yoga of Abraham, and read it. It's amazing. It has the postures. It explains the breathing
everything
exercise.
You need is all laid out there.
But if they want to have a personal experience, do you teach anywhere? How can people connect with you? What is the best way to get in touch with you?
Okay, so as far as getting in touch with me, yogaofabraham@gmail.com. Would be perfect. And I'm happy to answer questions. The book is available on Amazon. It's called Yoga of Abraham, Practice of Peace. And once again, I emphasize the word practice.
Yes,
because
don't just read it, practice.
Bringing peace into your life is a daily practice. So that's really how you get the information. And we're going to be doing some practical teachings at a studio called Yoga NoHo, which is in North Hollywood. And we're kind of putting all that together. The website is in the process of being built. It's noho.com. And that's where we're going to have classes and initiate people to it. But it is a daily practice. It's very accessible. So even if you just have the book in hand, whether you're in Alaska, whether you're in your office, whether you're in the park, it's a 20-minute practice. And it's all laid out very, very easily. And so I really hope people, get into a daily practice, and this would be a good choice.
Absolutely. That's amazing. You sometimes teach at BeurinUniversity. You got do lectures
right.
over
So
there.
BeurinUniversity has been my hub with Dr. Kobe Foreman. And there we're sharing the wisdom with people who already have a lot of wisdom, who are healers in various fields. And so to get the more didactic and more sort of in-depth version of things, then BeurinUniversity offers classes in that direction. Yeah.
Amazing. Ed, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today, for sharing this incredible knowledge. I am so honored you took the time to be here and talk about the Yoga of Abraham and teach our audience how to become empowered about their health.
Thank you. Well, thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure, and there's lots more to talk about. So I hope the conversation goes on between people in the audience, and I think the work you're doing is enriching our community, and it's making the village, more of a unified village where people talk and everybody brings their contribution to the table to make it a stronger village.
Thank you so much, Ed.
All right.
I appreciate it. Okay, Rebel Hearts, that is it for today. If you haven't done so, hop on over to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes and iHeartRadio, and leave us a 5-star rating and reviews, because your reviews actually help us bring in amazing guests such as Dr. Edward Wilson over here. And we will see you again next Wednesday at 3 p.m. PST. We will have Tanya Gabrielle on the show today, and we'll be talking about astronumerology, and she'll be doing a little forecast for 2018, so it's going to be exciting. So we'll see you again next week, and remember in the meantime to rebel on.
In the future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune